Let's take these app icons and make them horror themed, starting with this one. I'll trace over the M shape and strip out all the color, the blues, the greens, because none of that belongs in this video. Everything is going red. Once that is done, I'll start adding teeth into that center V shape. Then I'll drop in some eyes into the upper folds of the letter. I'll add blood dripping down the body of the M and across the teeth before finishing with a puddle underneath. And because it was looking a little flat, I'll add a radial gradient on the background. I'll be impressed if anyone actually knows which icon this really is. I'm guessing it'll go over most of your heads, but let me know in the comments if you're the exception. So here's the horror version of the icon you're about to comment. And just so you know, checking your unread emails is now at your own risk. And if you want to download these icons for completely free, the link is in the description. Next up is zoom. I'll drag in the hacker guy in a hoodie and clean him up so he's just standing there. Enough hacking for today, buddy. Then I'll separate the icon from the background and place him inside the camera window. I'll put a blur on him so he looks like he's one of those video feeds you really don't want to see pop up on your screen. I'll bring in a hand, draw the wrist in myself and blur that too, so it feels like his arm is coming from a distance. Then I'll add a dark background and here's the horror version of zoom. Let's just say this camera is better off destroyed. We still have Cash App and DoorDash at the end of the video, but let's move on to Amazon. I'll separate the arrow and the lowercase a into their own layers, and then I'll flip the arrow upside down. That smile Amazon is known for is now gone. Next, I'll manipulate the A so it starts reading as an eye. The curved top becomes the eyebrow and I'll flip the bottom sideways to push that even further. Once the face is there, I'll make the mouth red, add two big fangs, and draw blood dripping from the teeth. Basically, one eye is staring at you with a vampire grin underneath. So here's the horror version of Amazon, which is now a 2-day delivery on your worst nightmare. Next is LinkedIn. I'll separate the icon from the background and give it a linear gradient, dark blue fading into black. The original is just white letters, so I need to add something that actually earns its place here. I'll create a custom ellipse above the letters, color it dark red, carve an angry eye into it, and cut away the bottom to suggest a mouth. Then I'll shade the whole thing so it reads as a ball, like a creature is peeking over the top. Next, I'll bring in a claw and create a solid color version on a separate layer and hand shade the whole thing myself. Then I'll mirror it to the other side so both claws are gripping the letters. I'll scratch up the eye end with those claws and add blood seeping into every mark. So here's the horror version of LinkedIn. Now look, some connections you really don't want to accept. Now for YouTube. I'll trace the rectangle and the play button triangle to start fresh. Then I'll duplicate the triangle and use both copies as eyes. I'll shade the inside of each one to give them depth and a glowing look. For the mouth, I'll create a shape and fill it with rectangles, like prison bars. I'll add a line along the bottom edge for a 3D feel. Color the bars the same red as the YouTube logo and then duplicate and offset each one with a darker shade for extra depth. I'll give it a dark background and then I'll shade the logo and drop a rust texture over everything. For the eyes, I'll paint white over them and set the blending mode to overlay. It creates this red glow that bleeds into the texture underneath. Looks way better than expected. Then I'll paint a glitch texture on the eyes and increase the rust texture a bit more to make it more prominent because this thing needs to look damaged. Now we'll bring in a robotic arm from the top corner and shade the edges so it looks like it's crawling out of the darkness. I'll shade underneath the claw so it feels like it's actually gripping the logo. Last thing, I'll rough up the bars. I basically chip away the rectangle edges and add more shading to the T so everything feels heavy and integrated. So here's the horror version of YouTube. You're not watching YouTube, YouTube is watching you. Next up is Google Maps. So I'll start with the top disk and shade it so it looks round. I'll split it into 2 shades of blue, just like the original. Then I'll work my way down. A rectangle in the middle, color green on the side, bleeding into yellow and red on the other. And the bottom ellipse to wrap up the color scheme. I want this thing to be immediately recognizable as the Google Maps pin. That's the whole point. Next, I'll build the pin from a grey rectangle, round off the bottom, shade it into a cylinder and add a metal highlight. That'll bring in an eyeball and place it right where the point of the pin would go. I'll mask the pin into the eye so it looks like it's actually going through it. Contact shadows underneath, a shadow on the eye from the floor. Then I'll start adding blood to the pin underneath the eye and spreading out across the floor. So here's the horror version of Google Maps. It dropped the pin just not where you expected. Next up is Cash App. I'll bring in a hand and position the fingers so they follow the curve of the $ shape. Once the full set is in place, I'll add a knife into the scene. It was too short to span all the fingers, so I'll duplicate it and extend the blade. I'll drop the knife under the finger layers and shade it so it feels like it's actually making contact with the skin. That'll start cutting away small sections of the fingers at each point where the blade passes through. That'll give the incision marks contact shadows at every cut. I'll bring in a metal table underneath everything and darken the edges. Then I'll add a drop shadow on the knife and also on the fingers. For the blood, I'll add it to the blade first. Then I'll drag it across surrounding fingers with a brush at low opacity so it looks like the knife smeared it on the way through. Blood on the severed ends too on both the entry side and the exit side. Then I'll desaturate the fingers so they look less alive. And one more thing, after I finished recording, I realized these things look like little sausages without fingernails, so I went back in and added them. You're welcome. So here's the horror version of the Cash App. They said it was free to send money, but nobody said anything about fingers. And the final icon is DoorDash, where I basically turned a icon into a whole torture scene. I'll take the DoorDash D and rotate it about 90 degrees so it reads like a hook. Then I'll mask out a guy who looks dull, shocked, like he already knows what's happening. Then I'll align his chin with the opening of the D. The gap isn't wide enough, so I'll use the minimum filter in Photoshop to subtract pixels from the shape and widen it. I'll drop the opacity and mask away what I don't want visible, so his head passes through convincingly. I'll shade the contact points and then I'll add texture to the icon. Drop the red color entirely and keep it gray so it reads cold and like a heavy hook. Now for someone who's going through hell, he looks a bit like he's hungover, so let's give him some closed eyes, desaturate them and blend them in with some shading. Now we'll bring in a basement background. The perspective was off, so I'll scale it down and use generative fill to expand the scene. Now a background means new lighting, so I'll darken the guy and mask away his outer edges, like the light is hitting from behind. Now let me do the same for the hook. Currently the hook is just floating, it needs to hang from something, so I'll add 2 chains dropping from the ceiling. I'll match the lighting on those to the rest of the scene, but somebody had to put this guy here, so I'll drop in a silhouette on the stairs, which is a creepy figure walking down as if he's ready to continue. That'll do some damage, and I'll start with the blood on the nose and then some blood on the mouth. That'll give him a black eye. No, not me, I mean in Photoshop obviously. Anyways, I'll warp a blood texture across his clothes so it looks like it's been there for a while. Then I'll add a blood trail on the floor and also on the stairs, kind of like he was dragged here. Then I'll add a camera raw filter to bring it all together, so here's the horror version of DoorDash. Let me know which icon was your favorite in the comments, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, you might like this one too.